Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1156 for April 5th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
I think when you have a brand that people know, they automatically prejudge. And I think for me, what was special about Tormore was that literally nobody knows Tormore. So for us, it's like a clean slate.
Sukhinder Singh has been busy lately. In addition to getting ready to launch the Tormore single malt range in June, his team is putting the finishing touches on the new Portintruan Distillery on Islay. We'll get updates on both projects from Sukhinder later on WhiskyCast In-Depth, as well as his list of the distilleries that are exciting him these days. That's just ahead, along with the week's tasting notes, behind the label, and much more. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series.
Hey, it's Gabriel from Dewar's Whiskey. Here's a quick tip. Whenever you're pouring great whiskey, especially something like Dewar's 12-year, don't overthink it. All you need is a few glasses and a couple of people worth sharing it with. The rest takes care of itself. Back in a bit.
Let's get started with the week's news. Gallo has completed its $775 million acquisition of Four Roses from Kirin Holdings. It's the highest price ever paid for a Kentucky distillery. The new owners plan no changes at Four Roses. Brent Elliott will stay on as master distiller. U.S. spirits export sales fell nearly 4% last year, largely on the Canadian boycott of American spirits. That's according to new data released by the Distilled Spirits Council, which blames the boycott and 2024 front-loading of shipments by European importers to avoid potential tariffs. Take Canada out of the mix, and exports would have increased by 2.5%. Exports of American whiskeys were off by 19%, but whiskeys remain the most exported U.S. spirits, with nearly $1.1 billion in exports last year. So far, there's nothing new to report on the potential merger between Brown-Forman and Pernod Ricard. Both sides have said they won't comment on the negotiations until a deal is reached or they scrap the whole thing. A merger would create a clear number two in the drinks business to Diageo, though there would likely be some regulatory issues in France, where government officials see Pernod Ricard as a key strategic company and would object to any plans to move the company's headquarters to Louisville. Also, nothing new to report this week on the Uncle Nearest receivership case. The federal judge hearing the case is deciding whether to grant Vaughan Weaver's motion to terminate the receivership and return control of the company back to her. He's also deciding whether to slap Weaver with sanctions and a gag order for her news releases and social media posts around last month's ill-fated bankruptcy filing. Sazerac is moving to take control of the shuttered Garrett County Distilling Company near Lexington, Kentucky. A Sazerac subsidiary has already bought the bank loans for the property and now wants a foreclosure sale. Tom Collins Distilling LLC plans to bid on the distillery, build barrels and bottles of whiskey, and if someone outbids it, Sazerac will still be owed the $28 million judgment. The company has not said what its plans are for the distillery. Lofted Spirits President Peter Marino is stepping down at the end of June. He's one of the defendants in a whistleblower lawsuit filed by the company's former Human Resources Vice President. The departure is said to be unrelated to the litigation. Marino had been on the job for just 3 years. Last year, we reported on the shareholder lawsuit filed against MGP Ingredients, accusing company executives of misleading investors about MGP's financial health. Now, a federal judge has dismissed the lawsuit, stating that while MGP's executives handled market conditions poorly, there was no violation of federal securities laws. The suit was filed after MGP lowered its earnings expectations in October of 2024, leading to a sharp decline in the company's stock price. In other news, Japan's Kiyokawa Distillery has launched its first whiskey from what is believed to be Japan's first farm-to-bottle distillery. The cask, as it's being called, was matured for 3 years in an ex-Pedro Jimenez sherry cask and bottled at cask strength, 61.1% ABV. 398 bottles are available through Decanta at a price tag of $319.99 a bottle. Fagile is still a couple of months away, but Ardbeg has already unveiled this year's Islay Festival bottling. Ardbeg Dolce is matured in Sicilian Marsala wine casks and will officially go on sale May 1st. No word yet on pricing. Talisker is out with Talisker Magma 47-year-old single malt. It's finished in casks toasted using intensely heated volcanic rocks sourced from the Isle of Skye. It's one of the rarest Talisker whiskeys ever, with just 622 bottles available. The price tag, $5,250 a bottle. Glencadam is bringing back two old favorites as part of a packaging relaunch. The Tawny Port Cask Finish and White Port Cask Finish carry a recommended retail price of £46.50 in the UK. Knob Creek is introducing the Blenders Edition series of bourbons. Blenders Edition 1 was created by master distiller Freddie Noe and his team of blenders. It's 10 years old, bottled at 53% ABV, and will carry a recommended retail price of $44.99 a bottle. Chip Tate has released his second innovation since joining Foley Family Wines and Spirits. Gambit No. 6 is a 6-year-old Kentucky bourbon, finished in 6 different types of wine and brandy barrels. It'll sell for $69.99 a bottle. And finally, Iowa's Cedar Ridge Distillery has released the third whiskey in its Peat and Sherry Married series. Peat and Sherry Married Second Anniversary blends pale malted barley finished in PX and Oloroso sherry hogsheads with peated malt finished in Amontillado sherry butts. The malts are 6 to 9 years old, and the bottles are priced at $99.99 apiece. You can keep up with the latest whiskey news all week long at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Let's check the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. Tickets for the Spirit of Toronto Festival, May 9th, go on sale Tuesday morning at the Roy Thompson Hall website. And tickets for this year's Kentucky Bourbon Festival go on sale April 13th to subscribers to the festival's email newsletter and the next day to the general public. The festival runs from September 10th through the 13th. Thursday brings us the Bourbon Festival's Distillers Dinner in Louisville, along with the Chattanooga Whiskey Company's Founders Celebration in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The South Wales Whiskey Festival is this Saturday in Newport, Wales. The Texas Whiskey Festival is on the 18th at Star Hill Ranch near Austin. The Ultimate Whiskey Experience runs from April 22nd through the 24th in Las Vegas, and the Whiskey Fair is April 25th and 26th in Limburg, Germany. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025, Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Sukhinder Singh is known as one of the world's leading whiskey collectors, and his Elixir Distillers office has some 700 bottles on display. He recently sold 2 casks of Kurosawa single malt for £4.25 million. I talked with him about that deal, as well as the progress of Elixir's Tormore and Portintruan distilleries after a recent Manhattan Whiskey Club meeting. First of all, let's talk about the status of a couple of your projects. What's going on with Tormore? Are we going to see that first?
Yep, we're nearly there. We've been quiet over the last 3 years, patiently working on our liquid and more recently on the packaging. So we're finally launching Tormore in June 26, in 3 months' time, 2.5, 3 months' time. Initially UK, Europe, Asia, and then US.
With 3 expressions, right?
Yep. So we've initially 3 expressions. So we have a no age called Tormore Timeless. Then we have, which is predominantly bourbon cask, very clean, fresh, fruity. We have a 12-year-old, which is a marriage of bourbon, cream sherry, and a little bit of toasted new oak. And then we have a 16-year-old sherry cask, which has been finished in 2.5 to 3 years in sherry. But a softer approach to sherry. So, Tormore is an elegant, fruit-driven spirit. We didn't want to lose that character, so we used sherry casks which would sort of complement rather than mask the flavors of the distillery character. We're really proud, still working, developing, and I'm sure we'll get better and better in terms of liquid, but we're really happy where we are so far.
What attracted you to Tormore in the first place?
I think, finding a distillery which produces lovely spirit, which can be, I would say, improved, and one of the most beautiful distilleries in Scotland, and a product that actually nobody knows, I think was good. I think when you have a brand that people know, they automatically prejudge. And I think for me, what was special about Tormore was that literally nobody knows Tormore. So for us, it's like a clean slate. It's like having a brand new distillery, but it's an old distillery. It's close to a 70-year-old distillery. So that, I think, was special. We knew it made good spirit. We knew we could make it even, enhance it to make it richer and even more fruitier. And we made sure that the packaging, complements the style of the spirit, didn't mask it. We're working with the right wood types to complement the spirit. And for me, it's always about balance between fruit and distillery character.
How do you maintain that distillery character when you're starting from scratch with your new distillery at Tormore? How do you decide what the distillery character is going to be? So
at Portintruan on Islay, you're talking about Portintruan?
No, we're talking Tormore.
Sorry. So as I said, we've got a slightly richer, fruitier, more textural spirit. We're just using wood that complements it.
Thank you very much.
We're using wood that complements it. Wood is important, We don't want it to mask it. We want it to, mellow the spirit, bring, the vanillins from the wood, some of the other characteristics from the wood, but not, some gentle wood spices, but nothing to overtake it.
Let's talk about Portintruan now on Islay. When are we finally going to see Portintruan open?
So, Portintruan has been a really long, complex project. It was a lot more complex than we anticipated. And I think what we've learned is it's more about the challenges of working on an island. Everything has to be brought in, labor, staff, materials, skilled labor. All these things are so difficult to find on the island, so we had to bring them. And Islay, it's quite a small place. It has limited resources, it has limited accommodation, so you have to work around what's available, when you can bring labor force on, and it's challenging. The ferry challenges, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, it's the most amazing island, but sadly the government has not given it love. The locals are upset. the whiskey fans and other Islay fans who come for, be it birds or come for just the peace, the quiet, the tranquility of the island, everyone's upset because the government has not invested in the island. It's one of the biggest revenue producers in Scotland. Tiny little island with 10 plus distilleries now. It produces so much revenue for the government, but it hasn't had love. The roads need love, the transportation, be it the planes, be it the ferries, need love. So these were challenges I think we didn't know, we didn't expect. Locals have been fantastic, been so supportive. I think especially now, when the project started evolving and they saw how much love and how much effort we've put into the island, an island which, has probably not had that love. All the new developments have been small or been basic, and we've gone over the top. We made sure the architecture is good. We've made sure it's got so many different elements to this. It'll create employment, which is very, very important. We've been I believe we've done it in the right way. We're attracting a lot of employment. Everyone wants to come and work there, which is amazing. We thought we'd have to bring people from the mainland to come and work for us, but the response from the island has been absolutely fantastic.
Let's turn to other stuff. You're introducing a new Portiskeag 110 proof that you poured for us tonight here at the Manhattan Whiskey Club. Tell me about that one and what you're doing with the Portiskeag lineup.
So look, Portiskeag is an old brand for us, one of our early brands. It's nearly coming up to 20 years old. It's a brand where we've grown and we've evolved as a company where, initially we used to buy semi-mature spirit and then blend and bottle. Then we were buying, younger spirit and aging it, recasking it into our own wood. And we got to a good place, but then 15 plus years ago, we started filling new make spirit into our own wood. And we're now in a position where we have full control. We know what we have. We purposely filled our spirit into the wood we needed for our products, whether that's refill, whether that's first fill bourbon, whether that's refill sherry or first fill sherry. In some products we're using a combination of both. Some products we're using 100% of one wood type. So, for example, 110 proof is pretty much bourbon. Yeah. Why? Because for high strength, you need a bit of structure, body, and bourbon helps us with that. We're using, a younger stock with old stock. People think no age means young. No. If you go back in time and you look at no age products, the reason no age products were created was it gave the distiller flexibility to use younger stock with old stock. Younger stock gives you freshness, vibrancy, energy, whereas the older stocks give you more structure, wood tannins and all the rest. And to get the right balance between the two for different products, I think is so important. And I think with 110, that's what we do. We have the flexibility by not putting an age statement. We're not hiding anything. When people talk to us, we're very open about it. But it is, a balance between anywhere between 6 to 10, 12 years of age.
You recently made headlines with the auction of your 2 Kurosawa casks. Why did you decide to sell them now?
Look, I've had so much fun over the last 15 years with Kurosawa, longer since Kurosawa was first discovered, and we were the first champions of Kurosawa, selling it to the world through our online operation. And then we were fortunate we could buy we did some single casks. Then we were fortunate we could buy some casks. We bottled, and I think with the last 2 casks, they still have a long life ahead of them. They're 1999, some of the last vintages. They're youthful. They can age for at least another 10 plus years. For me, I think, it was like we're moving on. You see my point? My focus is really Islay, and Tormore. All my energy has been on Tormore, growing the sales team, working and understanding new markets. I'm here in the US because I want to learn the market. I want to work with our distributors. I want to find a good team within the market, ambassadors, to help us grow our brands. I think whiskey in the US, of course, is dominated by the big guys, which is fine. But I find that, as a whiskey fanatic, and I'm not trying to be unfair, I'm just finding that some of the best spirit, some of the best whiskey is coming out of the smaller, independent guys. Listen, the big guys, sadly, are about profitability, shareholder value, efficiency, and we're not. We are about flavor. I don't care what that costs. I just want to deliver good flavor. Whether that's, spending a lot of money on the barley or the yeast or the cask type, or the blending team. I don't care. I just want to create whiskey which is tasty and drinkable and enjoyable, and that's it. And unfortunately, for the big guys, everything is a commodity. And sadly now is also too much led by marketing. The passion of the spirit is slightly lost. It's more about what it looks like and the packaging and the age statement and this and that and how limited it is. And I'm over that. In the early days that was important. Today it's the last thing that's important. And honestly, the smaller companies that really care are doing it right. Are not rushing it, are doing slow distillation, longer fermentation, using the right barley, using the right yeast, are producing some of the best liquids. And I'm the biggest champion of that, Even with the big companies, where the whiskey is good, I champion it. I talk about it. I say, I really like this. Whether it's in bourbon or sherry, if someone's done sherry, no, I think it's better in bourbon. They should be doing that. And I tell the distillers themselves as well, I'm still doing an element of consultancy now and again, which is really humbling because I'm sort of a competitor now, but people still respect my opinion, which is really nice.
So who are some of the distilleries that you like these days? Who's making good stuff?
I really like Ardnamurchan, I like Torabeg, I like Arran, I like Ardnahoe, I like Deanston, I've always loved Bunnahabhain. I think they're just always consistently good. Of course, there's other bigger distilleries. I still think Talisker is so underrated. I really like Talisker.
You mentioned a distillery in the Netherlands tonight.
Yeah, Zuidam. Zuidam Distillery, bottled under a brand called Millstone. They do both single malt and rye. And I think their rye is so special. It's so different. It's much richer, it's much softer. And I honestly think it's one of the best ryes in the world.
You mentioned also THY, I forget the name.
In Denmark, a lovely distillery called Tu, spelled THY, but pronounced Tu, T-U. Lovely family-owned business, from farm to bottle. Every single process is done by them. Quite different to, the single malts we're used to. We bottled something recently under our brand Whiskey Trail, which is actually a malted rye. Yeah? So it's rye, malt, and a little bit of spelt. But it's just so soft. It's 4 years old, but it's just so soft. It's elegant. The spiciness is there of the rye, but not overpowering. The fruitiness is there. But what I love most, Mark, is purity. It has a purity, and that's because of the cereal. They are farmers, yeah? Foremost, they are farmers. Everything is organic, and you taste it in the spirit. They make sure nothing masks it, again, which for me is important. I like it. And the other, a big champion of lately is English distillery White Peak. They bottle under a brand called Wireworks, because their distillery is an old Wireworks factory. Yeah, they're doing a combination of brewer's yeast and distiller's yeast, which I'm a big champion of. So, there's a lot of companies, distillers doing it right. And I think there's a number of new Scottish distilleries where the people behind them are passionate, have done so much research, and they want to do it in the right way. Of course, it's early days. There's a lot to learn. None of us are distillers. None of us are experts. We all have a lot to learn, and a lot to prove. So, patience.
Thanks to Sukhinder Singh for joining us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly and we do them right. We start with a smooth single grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Elixir Distillers recently released the Tormore Blueprint series of single malts as a preview of what the core range should taste like. Let's start with the Blueprint Bourbon Barrels release. It's a 10-year-old single malt bottled at 48% ABV. The nose has touches of pears, nectarines, orange peel, apricots, honey, and vanilla. The taste is fruity with stone fruits and citrus, white pepper spice, and honey, and the finish is long and peppery with fruity undertones. I'm scoring the Tormore Blueprint Bourbon Barrels single malt a 92. The Blueprint Cream Sherry Casks is also 10 years old and also bottled at 48% ABV. The nose is fruity with a hint of hazelnut, walnuts, citrus fruits, and apricots. The taste is fruity and dry with a strong sherry influence. Figs and dates balanced with citrus fruits and a hint of spice that carries over into the long and creamy finish. I'm scoring this one a 93. Seattle's Westland Distillery recently released Watchpost blended whiskey several months ago, and now it's being made available outside of Washington State. It's an 8-year-old blend of Westland single malt with light whiskey bottled at 42.5% ABV. The nose, crisp and clean with stone fruits, honey, and vanilla. The taste is light, tart, and lemony with citrus fruits, a hint of apricots, honey, and vanilla. And the finish is long and fruity with a touch of oak. I'm scoring the Watchpost American Blended Whiskey a 91. And finally, the Frey family has released a new Frey Ranch Farm Strength Rye Whiskey. It's a 6-year-old rye bottled at 62.26% ABV. The nose has touches of baking spices, cocoa, honey, and vanilla, while the taste is thick and chewy with a slow onset of clove, cinnamon, allspice, and ginger notes. Chocolate and honey linger in the background. The finish, long, dry, and spicy. I'm scoring the Frey Ranch Farm Strength Rye Whiskey a 93. Our tasting notes are brought to you each week by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Lost Lantern seeks out the most distinctive whiskeys from across America, always with a commitment to transparency, so you know where your whiskey comes from and who distilled it. Check out the complete range at lostlanternwhiskey.com. Lost Lantern, bringing you the best of American whiskey and shining a light on the independent spirit. Let's open up the WhiskyCast community app and see what people are talking about this week. Ken Goldenberg from Orange County, California, posted this comment in the app the other day on the Uncle Nearest situation. Hey, Mark, I always enjoyed your interviews with Fawn Weaver. I loved the story about Nearest Green and have enjoyed the whiskey. But to me, Fawn often came across as having these big grandiose plans with really no details or plan of action behind them, just sort of a trust me attitude. Sort of reminds me of someone else. Thanks for the comments, Ken. Juan Cruz had a comment on last week's interview with Jefferson's Bourbon co-founder Trey Zeller. Unclear as to why the latest podcast interviewee justified lower sales to the cannabis, mushrooms, and Ozempic alternatives. Is such a claim verified? Strange comment to make. Well, I'm not sure about the mushrooms, but legalized cannabis sales and the Ozempic series of weight loss drugs have been cited by many industry leaders as part of the reason for the decline in whiskey sales. Whiskey Chris 71 responded with this as well. Surely ever-increasing prices for the same or lesser quality whiskey had nothing to do with it. It was the youths and their mushrooms, with a laughing emoji. Yep, rising prices and inflation in general have probably done as much, if not more, to cut into whiskey sales worldwide. What's your take? Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. We're talking people this week. Cara Lang is celebrating her 20th anniversary in the whiskey business. She's the third-generation managing director of Douglas Lang & Company, the Glasgow-based independent bottler and distiller, and was named a Master of the Quake this past week at the Spring Keepers of the Quake Banquet. I spent some time with Cara the other day on a Zoom call. I remember back when I first met you, you were at Bowmore working in the Visitors Center at the distillery.
Yeah, back in the day, I remember also. That must have been about 2011, 2012.
Something like that.
Yep.
And you've gone from working in the Visitors Center to running a company.
Well, I never actually worked in the visitor centre. I think they put me to work in there when I was over. But prior to Bowmore, it was Isle of Jura when I worked at White Mackay and working on the marketing side of life, and obviously going over to the distillery a lot then as well. And then I moved over to Islay and got my experience at Bowmore, both based in head office and over at the distillery. Obviously far preferred being over at the distillery whenever I could find an excuse to be there.
And then you joined the family company.
Yes, in 2013, my dad, our chairman, Fred Lang, asked me to come into the family business, and it was a tough call because I was really enjoying what I was doing at Bowmore. It was a great company to work for, great brand. I loved it, but it felt like the right time to move into Douglas Lang, and I've never looked back. Had a few challenges along the way, but never looked back.
Let's talk about those challenges. What did you face?
Well, initially a business that was very different to anything I had seen before, because I'd been used to brands like Jura and like Bowmore. So to suddenly come in and have a plethora of single cask brands, it was tough to get your head around. Suddenly you're working with distilleries from every region in Scotland and an expectation that you know something about each of those distilleries and their whiskey style. So that was initially a challenge. Big Pete was definitely the whiskey that I gravitated to most because it was closer to what I knew. But yeah, a lot of changes went on in Douglas Lang at that time. We created a new portfolio of brands, which is really exciting to do, but really tough and time-consuming and nerve-wracking because you just don't know if you're going to get it right until you launch it. We changed distributors globally on a number of occasions, and that's tough to do because there's personal relationships and historic relationships there as well. And and set about recruiting new team members. So all of that was going on at a time when I was still relatively young and relatively inexperienced, but a great learning curve.
You also had to go through the divorce between your father and his brother.
Well, that really happened ahead of me arriving in the company. So that was, that's going back to early 2013. So real ancient history now. But even by the time I arrived in the company, it was dissipating and becoming a sort of historic aspect to life at Douglas Lane.
You recently bottled a couple of whiskeys to celebrate your 20th anniversary. Tell me about them.
Over the years I've seen us celebrate various milestones, particularly for Fred, which is lovely. I didn't really expect to get one for myself because if I'm honest, 20 years by whiskey industry standards probably isn't that long, but I was asked by some of our team if I would select a cask to market, and that was a very pleasurable experience. It was actually something my eldest daughter suggested. She said, "Oh, Grandpa gets all these whiskies that are all about him. Why don't we get one for you?" So that was an enjoyable experience. And at the time when I selected the cask, it was deep midwinter. It's a surprisingly sunny day in Glasgow today, actually, and quite warm. But the day I selected it, it was on the verge of snowing, really cold, and I was in the mood for an absolute sherry bomb. And that's very much what I've selected. So it's from an undisclosed but family favourite distillery, and it's for me that ultimate warming spicy style of a sherry bomb, and it's got the dark fruits, the plums, the raisins, macerated fruits, sugar, spice. It was everything I was looking for in a crisp winter day in Scotland, and I stand by it even as the climate changes, thankfully, a little bit more. But I always find it enjoyable trying whiskies, and getting to select a cask of my own was really enjoyable. And then beyond that, I was asked to just pick a few that we already had recently bottled that were viewed as complementary bottlings, and so I selected a couple, one being from Jura, which is a distillery I'll always have a soft spot for. One was from Invergordon, also a White Mackay distillery, and I love an old grain, so they complement the lineup as well.
How is Fred doing these days?
He's good. He was at Keepers of the Quaich with me last night, so he still knows how to party, but he's currently resting up a bit. He had a ski incident at the start of the year and ended up with a broken ankle. But for a 75-year-old guy, he is still in the office most days, and even when he was on his crutches, he was paying us visits and walking over to the warehouses and checking out the casks and any bottlings that we were running. So no, he is still very active, very passionate, and very well. Thanks for asking, Mark. And
you were inducted as a Master of the Quaich last night.
I was. Quite an honour, and one where when I got the invitation through, I don't mind admitting I went back to them asking if it was a joke or if they got it wrong, because I didn't even vaguely see that coming. But a huge honour, and I was delighted to accept, if a little taken aback, if I'm honest.
And we send along our congratulations to all of the new keepers and masters of the Quaich inducted Monday night in ceremonies at Atholl Castle in Scotland. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the Whiskey Photo of the Week, and, of course, a complete archive of our past episodes going all the way back to 2005. We'd love to hear from you. Look for WhiskyCast on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
There's something special about opening a bottle of Dewar's 12 Year with the people who matter most. It brings out the stories, the laughter, and the kind of moments you don't plan, but never forget. Built on tradition, made for right now, and best when shared. Dewar's 12-Year-Old.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.